Hello, everybody. Good evening if you're listening to me right now, or good morning, or whatever time you're listening to me or watching this during the day. Enjoy it. It's very odd doing these webinars because I'm not talking at one person in front of me. I'm talking to a group that's everywhere, which is actually kind of exciting. First thing I want to do is thank Premier Dental Products. It is a terrific company, and I thank them so much for their financial support today. The seminar today is called Cementation 2020, New Options for a Changing Dental World. I named this course before the world really started to change. So we're going to be talking about how this relates to what we're speaking about tonight. Take a look at this. I just wrote this before. I won't speak it, but it's a difficult time for all of us, and I'm going to try to make this hour as interesting and as fun as I can possibly make it. I'm going to dedicate this to my son, who's in the right-hand corner of this picture, and my daughter, who is next to me. They are essential people at the moment. My son is a resident. He's going to be starting to work in the ER on Saturday, so I'm kind of scared. He's in a major hospital in Texas. My daughter, who I'm talking about over there, is a specialist in post-traumatic stress, and she's dealing with people who are seeing more post-traumatic stress these days. So these people that we helped create, that's my wife over there, are doing good things for the world, and I am incredibly proud of both of them. So we're going to be talking about cementation, but how are we going to talk about cementation if we don't talk about what we're cementing to? And that is changing a lot. So there is on this slide a splint of two teeth. It's actually a cantilever. I'm not going to tell you which the teeth are, but it's a brand new product you probably don't even know exists. Figure out which those two teeth are, and we'll talk about it later. So we're going to be talking about Y3s, Y5s, and hybrid zirconias, and what the differences are, where the best places to use them are. Thank you, Howard Ferran. I love this slide. I stuck it up here and I stole it from you. So we're going to be talking about new era cements that are perfect for this particular time, and I'll explain why in a few minutes. And we're going to be talking about some of the easiest cements to use. And right now in our dental world, easy is the most important thing. We're going to be talking about a new means of cementation of veneers, something you may not have ever tried before. A little scoop that I won't tell you about until later. But we'll talk a little bit about me just for a minute. I know no one really wants to know. That's my picture in the middle. That's really me. But here's my story. So if you take a look at that miserable person in the screenshot over here, the guy with the mustache who looks like a very, very unattractive Tony Orlando, for those of you old enough to remember Tony Orlando, you can see how unhappy that person is in that slide, except there's only one more person unhappier than me, and that's my instructor, which gave you an idea of how well I was doing in dental school. And that miserable look on my face lasted for quite some time. I got stuck in that rut for the next, I'd say probably about 15 years. Then I decided I was done, and I had to come up with something, or my life was going to be miserable because I hated dentistry. I hated what I was doing. So I looked in the want ads and I couldn't find anything. Unfortunately, there aren't too many positions that dentists really work out well for. So I decided that I had to do one of these two things, and I decided it was time to get better. And the way I got better was to find my personal genius, and he was many people's personal genius. His name, of course, is Pete Dawson. Very sadly, he passed away several months back, but he changed my dental world the way he changed many people's dental worlds. And I found that I was suddenly thrilled to be a dentist for the first time in my life. So I got so excited walking out of his courses that I decided the next place to go was to be able to make this pretty. So I went to my first AACD meeting. About 12 years ago, I got involved in the AACD hierarchy. I worked in the board of directors for a long time, and I had wonderful moments there. Next year, our annual meeting, or their annual meeting, I'm not really that much a part of it anymore, but their annual meeting is in Colorado. I'm hoping there will be an annual meeting. Who knows what's going to happen over the next couple of years. Let's hope that there are meetings again in the near future. So what I did is I get so excited about the cosmetic dentistry I learned, I decided to bring it to New York, went to the New York Academy and found out that it didn't exist. So I helped start my own academy with a whole bunch of people. It still exists. We have the most wonderful speakers around in dentistry. If you're from some other part of the country and you'd like to find out about who our next speakers are, please contact us. Go to gnyacd.com. And the last thing you're going to hear about me is that once I figured out how to do all this good stuff, I wanted to be able to teach it. So I got involved with this great organization called Catapult Education, which is a wonderful place where the dentists learn all kinds of stuff about all kinds of products, and we get to teach all about it, which is really a fabulous thing. All right, let's get to the meat and potatoes here. So 35 years in dentistry, about where I was at starting about that time, these were the only products we could use in the mouth. We had PFMs on the left, and we had gold on the right. Now, these are pretty good restorations. The gold restorations are still fabulous. The PFMs, many of them are fabulous too, but they were rudimentary, and there are a lot newer and better products on the market now. The materials we used for cementation back then were very simple. They were the two of these, I mean, phosphate cement and Duralon cement. For those of you who are young, you probably didn't know that Duralon was a permanent cement before it became a temporary cement. Now, that's not really a good thing. But the good news is I would say a good 80% of those restorations I did 35 years ago with Duralon stayed in the mouth. So they tended to work, even though they've kind of downplayed this as a product. So 5 years ago in dentistry, and maybe even 2 years ago in dentistry, these were my two favorite cements. I used them all the time. Many of us use the modified glass ionomer cements like the Fuji Pluses of the world, and many of us use Reliax Unisem and Reliax Unisem 2. Over the last 4 months, I stopped using them because I found materials that actually I feel were the best of their kind now, but now they murder the other ones because of the world we're in now, and I'm going to explain that to you in a few minutes. And those cements are the ones that we'll be using, I think, for a while, and I'll talk about why it may be beneficial for you to change, maybe not. So what are we looking for in cementation right now? Number one, we want compatibility, because today's cements are not like the zinc phosphates of the world. They actually bond to teeth. They actually become parts of the teeth almost. So we're looking for ease of use. We're looking for speed and easy cleanup. Now, speed was never a part of my dental world. I'm just not that kind of a dentist. But speed is becoming more important now. Why? Because for one thing, we're going to be working with all this monstrous stuff all over our heads. We're used to masks, we're used to gloves, we're not necessarily used to shields, we're not necessarily used to the other stuff that we're going to be wearing. We don't even know what that's going to be yet. So it's not going to be easy to do the job. We want to get it done as efficiently and as rapidly as we possibly can, but with quality. So we need to understand what we're cementing to, and we need to understand the times we're living in, because that affects everything that we're doing now in dentistry. So let's talk a little bit about our new crown and bridge world. And this doesn't necessarily have to do with COVID, but it does have to do with the changes that have happened over the years. So first of all, you might want to take a picture of this screen if you like. This is the new ADA ceramic classification chart. So if you take a look at it, this is a chart that shows the weakest restorations on top and the strongest restorations on the bottom. Conversely, we're looking at the least attractive restorations on the bottom and the most attractive on top, theoretically. That all depends how you feel about Emax. I feel that Emax is just as attractive as the Empresses and the feldspathic porcelains of the world, but that's a personal taste, and I know many people that still feel that the feldspathics and the Empresses of the world are better. It's up to you, up to them. So let's talk about lithium disilicate, which is my favorite material. I love IPS Emax. What is it? I didn't know what it was until I started looking this up a while back. So basically, lithium disilicate is a combination of a soft material and a hard material. That makes sense. So silicone is the hard crystal. Lithium is the soft white metal structure. They come together and they make something that's not quite a metal, but it is a ceramic that's stronger than past ceramics. You see a fracture strength of 500 as opposed to 100 that you saw with the feldspathics before, and you can go more minimally invasive because you don't need as much reduction as you did with Empress. I call IPS Emax Roundup the product killer. And it's because it's destroyed all these other products. Take a look there. We all used, well, we didn't all use, us old people used them, but the young people used some of them. You may have used Empress. You may have used Captech. The other ones, Bell Glass, thank goodness nobody uses anymore, I don't think. Targus Vectris, Inceram, Dicor, all of these products were basically dwarfed by this incredible, cosmetically appealing, very strong material. So this is new information for you to take down. I do still get a lot of my information from Gordon Christensen's report. I got to tell you, I still trust the guy. And this is what they're talking about right now in terms of reduction. So it's 1.5 millimeters for anterior teeth, 2.0 millimeters for posterior teeth as the recommended reduction for the teeth. You want a height of about 4.0 millimeters to get enough ferrule to be able to get a good enough restoration. What are the drawbacks to lithium disilicate? Simple, bridges and splints. There are people that do them. I don't feel it's the correct material for them. I will tell you about a new material that would be perfect for them now. So the cements we're going to be talking about come in three classifications. They're conventional cements, self-adhesives, and adhesive cements. As you go up here, you will see the names of different kinds of cements that are in these categories, and you'll see what the differences are between these cements. So as you go up in the adhesive category, you're talking about more strength and more steps. When you need a retentive prep, then you can go down to the bottom. Conventional cements can be used for a prep that's retentive. Adhesive cements can be used for just about anything. The bond strength from adhesive cement, because of the cementation process, is high. The bond strength of the conventional cements are a bit lower, and the fracture toughness as you go up the scale becomes more. So let's talk about them for IPS Emax. I divide this into two groups. First of all, the retentive crowns. Retentive crowns are crowns that are 1.5 millimeters or more, which means they're pretty thick crowns, and you don't need the strongest cementation items in the world. So here are a bunch of cements. I have used all of these. That's one of the wonderful things about being involved with Catapult, is the chance to use all kinds of materials. I've used every one of these, and these are all excellent cements. I'll tell you about my favorites in a few minutes, but I really like them all. When you go to non-retentive cements, then you're going to go to something below 1.5 millimeters, porcelain veneers and onlays. These are my favorites on the bottom: Variolink Aesthetic, Choice, and Ensure. Now, would you use a bonded cement for a retentive crown? My answer to that would be probably not. Why? Unfortunately, I can't speak to anyone right now, but I'll tell you the answer to that. The problem is, at some point, you're going to want to take that crown off. Or I shouldn't say you will. Someone will want to take that crown off. It might be 20 years from now, it might be 25 years. It could be 30 years. As I said, I've got a bunch of crowns in for 30 years. But at that point, you try to take this off with a retentive cement on a retentive crown, forget it. You're going to be ditching the tooth itself, and the next crown is going to have a whole lot less true structure to work with. So with retentive cases, try to go with non-retentive cements. Here are some new tips as far as Emax is concerned. So you're going to use acid etch. Of course, your laboratory is going to acid etch it. If you want to add a little acid etch as well, after you clean the tooth off, it's not a terrible thing to do. But do not use air abrasion on the inside surface, but do use Ivoclean or Zirclean and a bonding agent. The reason I'm emphasizing this is that Emax is actually the opposite of zirconia in many of these. So in a zirconia case we'll talk about later, you don't want to use acid etch, but you do want to use the air abrasion. Okay, so you might want to take a picture of this so you can see the differences. This is Ivoclean. Unfortunately, not the greatest slide in the world. Ivoclean I use with every single crown, every single restoration I do now. It contains sodium hydroxide, so it's for external use only, but it is a great material for cleaning out contamination from saliva and giving yourself the highest bond strength you possibly can. My favorite, I'm going to talk about a couple of my favorites here. Variolink Aesthetic is, for me, bar none, the easiest cement to use for bonding at crown or veneer or an onlay in. The color spectrum is good. It feels good in my hands. It's not too thick. It's not too thin. It flows very well. To me, it works great. These other two cements are excellent also. This just happens to be what works best for me. Bisco Choice is excellent. Cosmonet Ensure is excellent. Before this, I used Next 3, which is a care product. That's an excellent product as well. Removing Emax. Now, here's some good stuff that you may or may not know. If you have to remove an Emax crown, this is counterintuitive. You don't want to use a coarse diamond. You want to use a smooth diamond. I've got the blue stripes here, but you can use yellow striped diamonds. You can use red striped diamonds, but do not use the greens and the blacks because it just doesn't cut well through Emax. The other thing I found personally, that if I'm trying to cut through Emax, and thank goodness I don't have to do it often, I use carbides, and carbides work extremely well at removing Emax. If you have questions at the end of the webinar today, I will be answering as many questions as you have. If you have more than I have time for later, I'll give you my email address. Actually, I'll tell you right now. It's drpauster@gmail.com, drpauster@gmail. So now we're done with Emax, and now we're going to, guess what? That! The gargantuan that's eaten up the dental industry. Zirconia has taken over dentistry. That's basically what I can say. So not many years ago, PFMs ran the gamut of everything. Zirconia now does that, and it's mind-boggling how many restorations. If you talk to people at a laboratory, they'll tell you that zirconia is upwards of 70, maybe even 80% of the restorations that they do. So what is zirconia? Zirconia comes basically from Australia. It's a soft silver zircon material that changes texture basically when it's heated. So read this top part, because if I try to read it, it sounds even more complicated than it is. The first word there is yttria. So YSZ, or yttria stabilized zirconia oxide, is what becomes of the crystal structure of zirconia. So basically, yttria is a white powdery material that when it's placed with the zirconia oxide, allows the zirconia oxide to stabilize and stay in the form that it's in. So basically, if you heat the zirconia oxide to 1173 degrees Celsius, the crystals that form are tetragons. And what you're looking at on the left side of the screen is a tetragon. If you heat it even further, up to 2690 degrees, I don't want to be in that oven, I'll tell you that, it becomes a cubic crystal. So the left side are the right side are cubic crystals and the left side are tetragonal crystals. Now, if we're going to equate that to what's on the market these days, those tetragonal crystals are Y3 zirconia. Y5 zirconia is a combination of cubic crystals and tetragonal crystals. You thought I'd kind of cheat you there. No, Y5s is not 100% cubic crystals, it's just 50%. Why? Because cubic crystals, cubic zirconia is very, very breakable. You add the Y3 component and it makes it stronger. So the difference between the Y3s and the Y5s are the tetragonal zirconias are the materials we're going to be talking about on the next slide. And basically, they are very opaque. They reflect light. Y5s, because of their cubic components, absorb light, so you get a translucency. So that's something I didn't really quite understand before. Anything that is opaque, light bounces off it. Anything that is translucent, at least some of the light is absorbed by it, which is why the Y5s are the prettier, more aesthetic anterior zirconias, and the Y3s are the lesser attractive, very opaque zirconias, like Bruxer. So Bruxer, which we've been using for years, is not the most attractive material on the market, but no fully Y3 zirconias are. When you start adding the Y5s and you get some translucency, the ones on the right side, then you're talking about cubic properties. So if you're asking your laboratory for zirconia, now the best way to do it is tell them what kind of zirconia that you want. You don't want Y3 in the front of the mouth if you can avoid it. You don't want Y5 definitely in the back of the mouth because it's not as strong, a little more attractive, but it's not as strong, and you're probably fine with the Y3s in the back of the mouth. Now, preparation tips for zirconia, kind of similar to the preparation tips I was mentioning before for Emax. So now what we're talking about is an ideal reduction of 1.25 millimeters for Bruxer anterior and for other Y5s. In the back of the mouth, the Y3s, we're talking about maybe a 1.0 reduction, 0.6 millimeters minimum. But now that I've mentioned that minimum, the largest cause of failure, if you speak to a laboratory, is never over reduction, it's always under reduction. So when they originally told us about Bruxer, they said you can make it down to 0.5 millimeters. Not really a great idea. I've seen crowns break on insert because they're too thin. So you have to make sure that you have enough reduction to make it as strong as possible, but also make it as minimally invasive as you possibly can. A couple of great polishers that I like. The ASCP polishing kit, this is by Clinician's Choice, are great polishers. I love this texture of polisher. A couple of other companies make them. Ultradent makes similar ones, and there are a couple of others that do as well. These are the ASAPs. On the right side, if you're not going to learn anything from me today and you're not going to put anything down, here's what you're going to write down. The Comet 4ZR. Comet is not a company I've ever worked with, so I'm not getting a piece of this, but it is a fabulous product at removing zirconia. The Comet 4ZR series, if you use it in an electric handpiece, you are dynamite. You should be able to get that crown off in maybe 5 minutes, maybe 6 minutes. But here's the important thing: use an electric handpiece. It'll make your dentistry faster, easier, especially at this point in time where you don't want to spend an extra 10 minutes in a patient's mouth. Use these and try to find yourself an electric handpiece. One of the better ways to do it is to get the companies to bring it into your office when you open again. So try them out. Try every single brand in your office. They'll let you borrow it for a week. They'll let you use it for a week, see which one works best for you, and get that one. So choosing the right cements for zirconia, well, look what we got here. We got all kinds of cements, and they all work with zirconia, all of them. So the bioactive cements we'll be talking about in a few minutes. The self-etching cements we'll be talking about a lot, as well as the RMGIs. All of these I have used, and all of these are excellent cements. You might not see the cement that you use. There are a lot of good ones on the market. These are my particular favorites. They're all excellent cements. These are my two favorite zirconia cements now, and they just became my favorite cements over the last 3 months. And they've replaced a couple of others on the market, and I'll tell you why. Number one, we'll talk about ZR-Sem, which is a premier product on top. It has a very high bond strength to zirconia, and it's incredibly easy to remove the excess. I'll show you in just a minute. Fujisem Evolve on the bottom is an RMGI that I like. I don't always like RMGIs. I happen to like this one a lot for the ease of use and the fact that it's got a very good tack cure mode and easy dispensing. So the self-adhesive cements, why would we use self-adhesive as opposed to RMGIs? Well, the self-adhesives usually are a little bit easy to handle. They usually don't require any pre-treatment of the teeth beforehand, and they're usually a bit easier to remove. The cons include the fact that they need more isolation, and saliva is a real contaminant with these. So if you have a lot of saliva in the area, then I would recommend considering the RMGI alternative instead. So what makes ZR-Sem different? Why do I happen to love this cement? Well, there are a couple of reasons. Number one, it has its own number 10 MDP monomer, which means you don't have to add anything to it. You don't need Z prime, you don't need monobond plus. You can just use the cement, and that's all you're going to need. It's BPO and amine free, which means it's better for the environment and better for the patient. One of the things I like about it is refrigeration isn't needed. I hate the idea of taking something out of the refrigerator and then put it in someone's mouth when you don't have anesthesia, because the cold is very uncomfortable. So I happen to like that. And the next part I'm going to show you in just a minute. Now, as you can see here, this is an independent test at Creighton University School of Dentistry, and you'll see how well ZR-Sem performed compared to some of the other really great materials on the market. All these materials are excellent. I used all of them at different times. As I said before, I used Reliax a lot. Here is something else that Premier makes. I thank them for this. It's something I frankly had never had a use for before. But in this world, I think we probably do. And it's not a bad idea to put a plastic covering over your syringe if you're going to use it on one patient and then use it on another that day. Who knows what you're potentially cross-contaminating in terms of yourself and the patient. So I'm buying these, and I think I'm going to use them all the time. So if you take a look at the compule on the left side, there it is with the sleeve on top of it. The cement is placed in the crown. The crown is placed on the tooth. It is light cured. I like to use a short tack cure. I like to use 1 second on each corner. So 4 1-second cures is all that works for me. I don't need 3 seconds. I'm finding that 1 is good enough. This is the magnificent thing about this particular product. It comes off in one piece. I mentioned before that I used for many, many years Reliax. My problem with Reliax, the reason I used it is because it's an extremely strong product and a great product. My problem with it is if I tack cured a second or two too long, it was a nightmare getting it off the tooth. This is a very strong material as well, but it's much easier to take off. And the other things I like about it is virtually no post-op sensitivity, and the viscosity for me actually works beautifully. And it comes in 3 shades. Now, there are a lot of materials on the market that are excellent. I don't mean to say that there aren't other good ones. There are lots of them. SpeedSem Plus by Ivoclar Vivadent is a great product I've used for a long time. The Unisem I still use occasionally, but I'm starting to use ZRSEM all the time on those strong cases and bridges. GSEM Linkase is a terrific product. KTAX SEMCore is a very interesting brand new product by a great company called Kettenbach. The thing I like particularly about this product is that it does everything. It cements veneers, it cements crowns, it does everything, including work as a post-core material. So if you want to just carry one kind of cement, this may be the stuff for you. What I like to use for people who have very poor dexterity, who just can't clean their mouth, they can't floss, for children, for seniors, for people with high decay rates, is this product. This is called Activa. It's made by a company called PulpDent. We'll talk a little bit about bioactive products in just a second. Oh, there you go. How do you like that? The second is now. So if you take a look here, bioactivity, biomimicry basically means it mimics what the body's own processes are, including hydroxyapatite formation. So here's what basically happens with bioactive products. If you take a look at the bioactive resin on the left side, the tooth structure on the right side, you'll see there's a migration during the life of this product through the tooth structure, transporting water, calcium, phosphate, and fluoride. What does that do? Well, it keeps it basically as a dynamic material as opposed to a passive cement that you just put there and you never see again. That's the point of it. It actually continues working through the lifetime of the product. And you can see a little bit on the bottom of this picture of the apatite formation. So I like to use it, as I said, for immunocompromised patients, disabled patients, children, high decay rate patients. The thought is that there will be less recurrent decay for those patients. Back to cementation tips. All right, as I said before, this is the opposite of Emax. So you do not acid etch zirconia. It can ruin the zirconia. You do use air abrasion to give you a little bit more retention. And you do use Ivoclean or Zirclean. I didn't mention Zirclean before. Zirclean is a Bisco product that is now Ivoclean's #1, I guess, competitor. It's also an excellent product at cleaning the intaglio surface of zirconia or of any other product. Part 2, do use Monobond Plus or Z Prime when you're using zirconia, but if the cement has MDP, the 10 MDP in it, you don't need to use the Z prime. And that was one of the benefits of the products that we've been talking about. You want the laboratory to polish zirconia, not to glaze it. What's the reason for that? Well, the glaze wears off in a short amount of time. And what do you have then? You have an unpolished zirconia that can actually really start to damage the tooth below or the tooth above. So ask your laboratory in a zirconia case, get them used to polishing it and not glazing it. Tips part 3. So we were talking about the PulpDent products, and we're talking about Ceramir, which is another really good bioceramic or bioactive cement. With both of those, do not use the 10 MDP. So you don't use Z prime with it, and you don't use Monobond Plus with it because it can cause a problem with the bioactivity process. All right, so we're through with the Y3s, the Y5s. So what's left? The Y3s and the Y5s, of course. This is a phenomenal new product that's brand new on the market. It's called Emax Zircad Prime. Tricked you there, huh? It's not IPS Emax lithium disilicate. It's IPS Emax Zircad Prime. Really? Do there have to be that many names? Basically, what Ivoclar Vivadent has done is they've taken the IPS Emax name and they put it on most of their products because IPS Emax has been such a hit. So it works for their zirconias and it works for their lithium disilicates as well. You might want to take a picture of this. This will tell you a little bit more than I have the time to tell you about Zircad Prime, but it's a very, very interesting, very cool new product. All right, how do you like that case? Huh? Yeah, I know. So this young lady had just had her ortho bands taken off. What do you think of this case, huh? Yeah, I know. So on the right side of the mouth, we have a class 3. And on the left side of the mouth, we have a, I don't think there's any class there. And we don't really have room enough for laterals. And we have not looking good front teeth with lots of decay and lots of decalcification. And the young lady just turned 15 and she's not ready for major work yet. And what the heck are we going to do with her? So what are our choices? Well, we could consider a Maryland bridge temporarily. Would a Maryland bridge hold well on this? I don't think so. Not with that screwy occlusion that she's got and the size of those canines. So that's not going to work. Can we do implants or even think about implants? No, because there isn't enough room for implants on either side. So that's not even a thought for the future. It looks even worse with each mode here. Take a look at the perio on these two teeth. So we read her the Riot Act and we told her it's time to take care of your teeth if you want to have any by the time you're 18. So she started doing things a little bit better. And we bonded those two front teeth. The product we used for the bonding is Tokiyama Estelite Omega, which I find is a really wonderful product. You can see I tried to make some sanitary pontics in the 7 and 10 spots, and we tried to create those canines and give them at least a little bit more size than what we started with. So again, what did we do? Well, anyway, here's what it looked like a couple of weeks later with everything cleaned up. Everything healed a lot better. We still have some periodontal issues, but nowhere near as bad as what we started with. So what do we do here? Well, we had to do something that would be minimally invasive. So we weren't going to bridge them. Not a good case for Maryland bridges. So this is where this terrific new product comes in handy, the Zircad Prime. It can be made extremely thin. So we actually made it at less than 1 millimeter. We took the canine on the right side that had a big space between it and the bottom tooth, which actually worked out really well. We created a little bit of space on the left side, so there was room between the canines and the bottom. And we made cantilever crowns that went over the full-size tooth. This way, when we're ready to do some more work, I mean, she's going to need ortho or she's going to need orthognathic. She's certainly going to need something other than this, but this way we were minimally invasive. We didn't drill away anything, really, except a little bit on the biting edge of those teeth. And here's that picture I showed you before. So tooth number 7 is a cantilever. Tooth number 6 is the actual retainer on top of the tooth itself, right like the crown sleeve copings we had many years ago. And that's the case. Look how nice the color is. Look how perfect it looks next to the bonding that we did on tooth number 8. One of the great ways to really see color is to take a look at it in black and white. And if you look at it in the black and white, on the other side looks really good. Number 10 looks good. Number 7, which we just looked at, doesn't look quite as good in the black and white as it did in color, but it does match pretty well. So here was our beginning, and that's what we ended up with. And is it a perfect case? No, they're a little bit bulky because we're making canines on top of canines, but other than that, it's not bad, and we'll revisit this case when she becomes 18 or 19. Here's another case using Zircad Prime on those two anterior teeth, 24 and 25. We have some pretty good strength there, and we have very nice aesthetics, as you can see how well it matches the teeth next door. Next gen aesthetics, these are zirconia teeth. Really, these were all made from zirconia. You can see how beautiful they are. You can see the translucency here. The work was done at Valley Dental Arts, and they do wonderful work there with aesthetics. There are other laboratories that I use for other cases, but this is just beautiful work that they do if you're looking for real beauty in your zirconia. So here's my favorite implant cement. We haven't spoken about implants. I've been using this stuff for years without the plus. The plus is the new part. Premier Implant Cement. It has been my go-to for quite some time. It's a strong cement, but it is removable. Now, what they've added to it is a very excellent amount of radiopacity that wasn't part of it before. Why is the radiopacity there? Well, of course, it's there so we can check any excess cement so we can avoid cementosis on these teeth or any other implant problems caused by cement. So what are we using this for? Why do we use it? Well, no etch is required, no bonding agent is needed. It actually is made for implants, and that's what it's good for as well. Why do you want to use a temporary cement with implants? Well, I still like it. I do not like the idea of permanently cementing an implant crown because sooner or later that screw is going to loosen. Sooner or later there may be an implant problem or a mobility problem, and this way it's retrievable and fixable. Isn't that a good reason to use a cement? Absolutely. This is another implant cement that I use for cases when I really need strength. It's called 0G. I like the cement, but you have to be really quick with it because it sets very, very fast, and then it becomes another difficult issue to take off the cement. So that's another good possibility. What makes the PIC Plus different? They call it Premier Implant Cement. Different is the fact that it really has very strong opacity. You can take a look at it compared to other implant cements on the market. And let's talk about temporary cements. So these are my favorite temporary cements. So if I'm doing a cosmetic case in the front of the mouth, zone free is my favorite. Why? It's because it's a clear cement, but it's not a composite cement. What's the benefit to that? Well, a clear composite cement can be a problem. So if you have a composite underneath the composite cement, it's very easy for it to stick. And there's a product on the market that caused me a number of nightmares because I used a composite cement over composite. This is not a composite, so it's easy to remove and it's clear, so you don't see some icky looking temporary cement underneath it. The other temporary product that I like is a product called NextTemp, which is a premier product. This is a coincidence that I'm talking about so many premier products. They have, in my mind, at this point in time, some of the best cements on the market in almost every category. So I do recommend what they use. Why do I like NextTemp? It's been around for many years. It's not a new cement, but it's got good stuff in it. It releases fluoride. It has potassium nitrate for sensitivity. It has chlorhexidine as an antibacterial. So it's got all kinds of good stuff in it, and it comes off relatively easily when you need it. It's strong and it comes off easily. To me, that is a perfect combination for a temporary cement. But there are a lot of good temporary cements on the market. I'll tell you a little bit about these. TempoCem ID is one of my favorites. It is a clear composite cement, but I've learned how to use it. It's not the nightmare one I was telling you about. What you do with it, or what I do with it in particular, I use some silicone in the form of a very small amount of KY jelly over the composite that the cement is going to go over. So it keeps the composite from locking into other composites. Tempon NE I've used for years. It's still one of my go-tos, even though it's been around for many, many years. I like it. I also give it out to patients if they're going on a vacation because it's very easy for them to maneuver if, heaven forbid, the crown comes off. In the middle, there is a polycarboxylate cement made by Ultradent, which is not quite as strong as Duralon, but it gives you some strength on cases where you really want strength as well. So here's an interesting case to show you. This is a way of doing composites in a slightly different way than what you're used to with cements. So here is the case. Now, this is another ortho case. I'm not high on ortho in this particular lecture. You'll see what's happening to the case. A dentist had started bonding a couple of these teeth, bonded number 7, bonded number 10, and bonded number 6, and you see what happened to the bonds. They didn't do very well. And as you can imagine, this young lady was not happy with the way that her teeth looked. Here are wax-ups that I had made. I tell you, I didn't love these wax-ups. They look very bulky to me. But in the mouth, they didn't look bulky. And I'll show you what they look like in just a minute. So this was the case after we prepped it. We made slot preps on the two anterior teeth because of the spaces on either side. These are the temporaries, and I hate the fact that I took a picture of the temporaries before I actually refined the temporaries. As you can see, they look like one big tooth, but I wanted to just see how the size looked on her. And stupidly, I never took any more pictures of the temporaries. You're not going to get a whole lot from this, but you get an idea of the sizes. If they were differentiated more, you can see what it looked like. This is called an Optragate. Now, if you haven't used an Optragate is going to be terrific in today's times because it isolates the area. It's not as good as some of the other products on the market in terms of really taking away saliva, but it does give you a drier case to be able to do the inserts. So here's what I like to do when I'm cementing a case. This is Concepsis, which is a wonderful material. It's made by Ultradent. I use it instead of pumice, and I've been using it for years. It cleans the tooth off. It does really good stuff. There's a liquid version, and there's also the paste version like this. And we worked on all the teeth. Now we're doing the etching. I did this as an etch and bond case. Washing off the etchant. This is Adhese. Adhese is a product that is made by Ivoclar Vivident. I love this stuff. I love it because of the applicator. First of all, you're not wasting a lot of material with it. Second of all, you can just place the material exactly where you want to because of that little fuzzy tip on it. So here we're placing one of the veneers. Now, if you take a look carefully, you can see what makes this technique different than what you normally do. If you look at the other teeth, if you look at number 8, you look at number 7, number 10, and number 11, what do you see? You see cement. So the cement is on the teeth, not on the veneers. What's the benefit to that? Well, the benefit to that is you're working with dry veneers. You're carrying a dry restoration over to the tooth instead of a wet one that's got all kinds of gunk on it. In my mind, it makes it a lot easier to do the case, especially when you're doing veneers here, because they're light cured products that give you a while to work with. So here's with the first veneers placed. There's the 3. Now you see all 6, and you'll see that there's excess cement all around, but it's coming off very simply. If you take a look here, you'll see that tooth number 9 is not exactly in the same alignment as tooth number 8, right? Very, very easy to fix. And I end up fixing it using a product by Ivoclar called the OptraSculpt instrument. So what I use when I'm cementing a veneer these days, I will use the OptraSculpt instrument to place the veneer in and push it labially. I use my finger to hold the incisal edge of it. So the incisal edge is held by my finger, and the instrument is placing it. And as you can see here, that problem in the alignment is gone right after the teeth are about to be cemented. You can actually get floss in here very easily if you're using a glide, thin, easy cement. And after that, it's trouble-free. It's really, really easy to clean these up if you do it this way. There's the case after we did it, before we finished cleansing. And you'll take a look at a couple of things I don't like about this. So we did 6 veneers. All right, I don't like doing 6 veneers. Why don't I like it? Well, I don't like it because of the way this looks. Okay, you take a look, it looks like you have 6 teeth, right? So it's why I will always try to get a patient to do 8 veneers rather than 6. If they can't afford it, that's perfectly fine. And especially in this day and time, no one's gonna be able to afford what they're used to doing before. So what we do instead is we bond the teeth behind them. So you can see here that tooth number 12 was bonded. Number 5 was not bonded yet in this picture, but you can see that one side is blending much better than the other side. So here's what it looks like after we bonded number 12. It looks really good, doesn't it? Now number 5, we'd added a little bit and then we just had to leave. so we couldn't finish it. Patient was supposed to come back, and what happened then? Suddenly we couldn't see patients anymore. Well, anyway, there's the difference between working on 6 teeth and working on 8 teeth, and it makes a big, big difference, doesn't it? So here's what I'm going to say, and I'm going to read this part, and that's: thank you for inviting me into your lives at a difficult moment in dentistry and our world. I hope I've opened up your mind and given you some momentary escape and interest. I hope I made this interesting, because I tell you, I don't want to see any more seminars about the PPP. I just don't want to see that anymore. So I'd like to see more things about dentistry, at least for now. So stay safe and stay healthy, everybody. We will get through this moment. But we're not done yet, because a lot of people seem to have questions. So let's go through some of them now. There are a lot of questions here. Oh, wow. How do you like that? Robin said, you have a wonderful family and all the best to your son. He's brave. Yeah, he is. Braver than I ever was. Will this be available on a PowerPoint later? I'm sorry, it won't be, but actually the seminar itself will be available for quite a while. Can Emacs be air abraded if the crown debonds and has excess cement on it? You know, that is a really good question. Now, if there's a lot of cement on it, I don't see any reason why that would make much of a difference. I think you probably can, to gain a little bit of retention from it. So the answer to that is yes. I will probably try to debond it as much as I possibly can. Let's see, is Ivoclean recommended before acid etching the crown? Yes, the Ivoclean is the first step. So first I wash it, clean it, and the next step is the Ivoclean before anything else any other step we're going to be doing. Let's see, why is Emacs easier to cut with smooth diamonds? How do you recognize or identify an Emacs crown on a new patient? You know what? That is a really difficult question in terms of why it's easier with smooth diamonds. I don't have the answer to that. I'm not a chemist. I'm not a lab person. I can't give you the answer. I just know that it works. And it has been recommended by other clinicians before. How do you recognize or identify an Emacs crown in a new patient? You can recognize it on the X-ray, because Emacs crowns, you can see it come out as translucent, and zirconia crowns or metal crowns, you can see the metal through it. Let's see. I'm going to read this one. I only shy away from zirconia as it's too hard to take off. Do you have any tips for taking off zirconia? Sometimes I have success with a smooth diamond, but other times takes forever. Absolutely. It's what I said before. You might have missed that part of the course. I find zirconia crowns are easier to take off than almost any other kind of crown, except maybe a PFM. And that is using the materials we talked about earlier in terms of removal. And it's in the lecture. If you want, contact me later and I'll tell you exactly the Z4 zirconia removal instruments. Thank you. All materials very well. Oh, thank you. Is zirconia kinder to opposing teeth than Emacs? Why is zirconia taking over? Emacs is strong and aesthetic. That is a very good question. I happen to love Emacs, and I use Emacs in virtually every tooth in the mouth. I even use it in second molars at times, but I have seen more failures on second molars by Emacs than I've ever seen in zirconias. So if you saw the clinician's research study, it said that in, I believe, 1,000 zirconia restorations, 0 of them failed that were prepared correctly. You will see some Emacs failing in the back of the mouth. So zirconia in the back of the mouth is a bit stronger, for sure. Let's see, can you acid etch Emacs before using Ivoclean? I'm not sure why you would want to. I will always use Ivoclean first as the cleansing agent, and then whatever you're going to do, you're going to be doing it on a clean suit structure. What brands do you like for electric handpieces, and share the settings? Well, I'll tell you, the electric handpiece that I use is called the Comfort Drive. It's made by Cavo. It doesn't have settings. It's the only one out there that doesn't have settings. It only has a single setting. Because it doesn't, it's less expensive than the other ones on the market. But there are a lot of good ones on the market. As I said before, use whatever works best in your hands, because that makes the difference, is what works best for you. When you fill the crown with cement, shouldn't the margins be fully covered? Of course they should be. Of course they should be. So what I didn't show you is, before I place each of those veneers I'm talking about, I will always make sure that the margins are completely covered, absolutely, and the same thing with crowns. Okay, it looked like the Zersem had poor color stability in the Creighton study. What happens to the color? Does this mean you do not use it for the anterior? I use Zersem, ZRSEM actually. I use it all over the mouth. I haven't seen any problems at all using it toward the front of the mouth. And I haven't seen any stability problems with the color over long periods of time. And I've been using ZRSEM now for, well, before I stopped using it, before I stopped doing any dentistry, I've used it for, I guess, about 4 months or so. Do you feel you have to tack cure the cement? Isn't it better to clean the cement all around, floss, then cure? That way you do not get cement that you might have cured a second too long, and then it's a nightmare to clean away the extra cement. There are lots of ways of cementing veneers and cementing crowns. I find tack cure works very, very well. It allows me to floss it. And I love the ability to floss it. I know that I can feel already that the crown or the veneer is already in pretty well. I don't feel that it's going to come out, so that's not a problem for me. I really like it. It works for me. Can you repeat which cement for almost everything? Oh boy. All right. Well, let's see if I can think about my favorites. For veneers, it's Variolink Aesthetic. For onlays, it's Variolink Aesthetic all the time. For crowns, my two favorites are ZRSEM, which I just talked about, and Fujisem Evolve. Fujisem Evolve is an RMGI material by GC. It's kind of the next generation Fujisem, and I like it because it's really, really easy to work with. But ZRSEM at the moment is my favorite. Do I recommend having the lab polish and not glaze zirconia for anterior crowns as well? No. In the front of the mouth, of course. On the anterior, if it's not going to be in occlusion, I definitely want it to be glazed for sure. Is there a trick to get a temporary crown cemented to an implant off? There's a good question. I don't know. I use GC pliers to remove them, and it always works for me. There is another set of removal pliers that my associate has. I don't know the name of it. Earl, if you want to email me at drposter@gmail, email me, and I will tell you the name of these pliers, which are awesome for taking off just about anything. Say, thank you. When you use an instrument to push 9 labially and apically, do the adjacent 10 move also? No, I am extremely careful. And of course, that's a problem when you're putting in a lot of teeth at the same time. You know, it's a judgment call. I mean, in some cases, I'll just do 2 at a time. I've learned that with Pure veneers, I will do all of them together if it's 6. I don't like going beyond 6. And yes, you're absolutely true. If you move one in, can you move the other one out? Yes. What I always do is at try-in, I put floss in between them. I make sure that one is not going to be pushing another. That is really, really important before you actually start to cement cases. And I totally recommend that. When I'm doing a case that's veneers and crowns at the same time, then it's a different story. Then it's a, all hands on deck and figure out the best way to cement it at a time. Let's see, why do I recommend an electric handpiece to remove zirconia? Oh, because it's so much easier. Basically, the difference between an electric handpiece and a conventional handpiece is that an electrical handpiece moves faster as you go deeper into the tooth. A conventional handpiece slows up as you go deeper into the tooth. So when you're going deeper and you're trying to remove something that's a relatively thick piece of material, it is so much easier to use a product that goes stronger as it goes in. I tell you, if you learn nothing from me today, consider electric handpieces, especially in this environment now. If you can do something in 5 minutes that before took you 15 minutes to do, you saved yourself potential contamination and you saved a lot for this patient, really. Ooh, a lot of very nice comments. Thank you, people. Let's see, on zirconia, would you use micro etch and IvoClean? Yes, I would use the IvoClean first. After the IvoClean, I use the micro etcher all the time. Thank you. Bonding mostly used. I don't know what you're talking about in terms of bonding materials. I'll tell you what my favorites are in terms of regular bonding materials. I am a huge fan of Omnichroma. You may know that I was one of the people that introduced it a year ago, and I find it a fabulous material. I use Estelite Omega. I use Harmonize by Kerr, which is a really excellent product. There are a lot of really great products on the market. The flowable composites that I use the GC products. Some of them are fabulous. They're not really flowables. They're injectable cements. So they're products which are really, really good. Let's see, what is the best technique to adjust the contacts on crowns before cementation? I use a Occlude. Occlude is a spray. It comes in a can and makes you feel like you're spraying, graffiti on the wall of a subway. That's what it sounds like. But I spray it, put it on the tooth, find where the green marks off or where the green marks come off, and it works very easily. I really like using that material a lot. Let's see, do I use PFMs? That's a really good question. There was a period of time a couple of years ago where I completely stopped using PFMs and decided never to use them again. And you know what? I just started using them again, believe it or not. Why? Well, I'm finding that the last generation of crowns that were there 20 odd years ago, some of them were prepped down to the bone, and they were prepped as feather edge preps. So do you want to prep more with those cases? Do you want to go way below the gingiva if you're not going to put the patient through some periodontal surgery? So on those cases, I am going to use a feather edge prep. It is not recommended to use feather edge preps for zirconia. People do it, but I'm not a big fan of it. So somebody likes my sense of humor. Thank you. That's a beautiful thing. I got to tell my wife that. Let's see, there are a few slides I didn't catch fast enough. Open to sharing your PowerPoint. I can't share the PowerPoint, but this, as I believe this seminar is still going to be available for a while. You can find out through Viva Learning. Let's see, what do I mean by bonding 5 and 12 to the veneers? I'm not bonding them to the veneers. I'm bonding them to make them look like the veneers. So I used Estelite Omega, similar shade to the shade of the veneers, and you can see it really came out beautifully. It's really, really wonderful material. Do I have any tips on material choice for super dark stump shade, even darker than C4? Did an Emax by patient complaint stump darkening, not enough bite clearance for Empress due to constricted bite? I tell you, I used to leave it up to my laboratory. And I had my laboratory just make the crown or the veneer as thick as, not as thick as they possibly can, but with as much opaquer as possible. I have found that if I add some opaque flowable composite instead, it works wonders. But I have to take away more tooth structure in order to do it. So I have to make the tooth structure a little bit thinner. If it's a non-root canal tooth, it's a problem. But usually it's a root canal tooth that's actually that dark. So I don't mind taking away a little bit, and adding some opaque composite to it, and then the opaque material is placed over that. We have time for maybe one, maybe two questions. Who's the manufacturer of Zone Free? Zone Free is now made by Pentron. It used to be made by a company called Dux Dental. I love it because whenever I'd ask for it, I'd go, quack. And unfortunately, Dux Dental doesn't seem to be around anymore, which is very sad. Let's see, what is the brand of cement I like most for cementing veneers? As I mentioned before, it's Very Link Aesthetic. They have a dual cure, and they also have a light cure material. And I think that pretty much covers. We have a lot of questions. Wow, there are 75 of them. Well, anyway, you heard my email address. It's drposter@gmail.com. And I hope you enjoyed this. Apparently, there are a lot of people here. So thank you for inviting me into your life. And thank you for allowing me to be part of this. And thank you, Premier Dental Products. And thank you for Viva Learning for the truth. Actually, Trung at Viva Learning did a wonderful job of helping me with all this. And thank you so much.